The first time Daniel Hart saw the house on the hill, it was shrouded in mist. He had driven past it dozens of times, never once noticing it before. That morning, though, the fog lifted just enough for its sharp roofline to emerge, black against the pale sky, lonely and tall. Something about it caught his attention. Perhaps it was the single light flickering in an upstairs window, as if someone were waiting. Or perhaps it was the sign out front, "For sale, inquire within." He almost drove on. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. He stopped the car, stepped out, and stood in the cold air. The road behind him was empty. The air smelled faintly of rain and pine. The house loomed over him, old, 3 stories, its windows boarded on one side. The gate was rusted but open, as though inviting him. Daniel hesitated, then started up the path. He was an architect by profession, a man who believed in structure and logic. But even from here, something about the angles of the house disturbed him. The geometry felt wrong. The porch leaned too far forward, the chimneys tilted slightly inward, and the windows seemed to change size the closer he got. He told himself it was an optical illusion. He had always been a man of reason. But reason didn't explain why his heart began to race as he reached the door. He knocked once. The sound echoed through the stillness, deep and hollow. No answer. He turned the knob, and the door creaked open on its own. Inside, the air was stale but warm, carrying the scent of dust and old books. A hallway stretched ahead, lined with faded portraits. Each face seemed to watch him, eyes half hidden beneath layers of grime. He stepped inside, calling out, "Hello? Anyone here?" His voice came back to him, slightly delayed, as though the house were thinking before answering. He almost left then. But something, perhaps pride, perhaps curiosity, kept him there. He wandered deeper, past a grand staircase whose banister was carved with strange, twisting symbols. At the end of the hall stood a small table with a ledger upon it. In neat handwriting were 3 names: Lydia Gray, 1947. Thomas Bell, 1973. Daniel Hart, 2025. He froze. His own name, written there long before he'd ever stepped inside. His throat went dry. He touched the ink. It was fresh. A floorboard creaked above him. He looked up. The light in the upstairs window flickered again. "Hello," he called. No reply. But somewhere in the distance, faint and slow, a piano began to play. The melody was soft, mournful, a lullaby. He climbed the stairs, the sound guiding him. Each step groaned beneath his weight. When he reached the landing, he found a long corridor lined with doors. The music came from the last one on the left. He pushed it open. Inside was a grand room with high ceilings and tall curtains that swayed despite the windows being shut. A piano sat in the corner, keys moving by themselves. No one was there. The music stopped abruptly as he entered. Silence. On the piano's surface lay a single sheet of music. It was titled, "The Heart Requiem." He frowned, flipping the page, but the rest was blank. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him. He spun around, heart pounding. The temperature dropped sharply. His breath clouded in the air. And then he heard it, a whisper, faint and near his ear, "Welcome home." He bolted for the door. But it wouldn't budge. He slammed his shoulder against it once, twice, and on the third hit, it gave way. He stumbled into the hallway, gasping. The corridor looked longer than before. Much longer. The walls now curved slightly, like a tunnel. He ran. Every door he passed looked identical, yet each bore his initials carved into the wood, DH. Finally, he reached the stairs, but where the staircase should have descended, there was now only darkness. And from that darkness came footsteps. slow, deliberate, ascending. He backed away until his spine hit the wall. "Who's there?" he demanded. The footsteps stopped. A woman's voice replied softly, "You are." The next thing he knew, the floor shifted under him. He fell, not far, but enough to knock the breath from his lungs. When he opened his eyes, he was in a different room. The walls here were covered with mirrors. Each one reflected not his face, but versions of it, older, younger, tired, terrified. In one, his reflection smiled back even though he did not. In another, it whispered something he couldn't quite hear. He turned in circles, dizzy. One mirror was cracked down the center. Behind it, he thought he saw movement. He reached out, and the glass rippled like water. Before he could pull back, a hand shot through and grabbed his wrist. He screamed and yanked free, stumbling backward. When he looked again, the mirror was still, but his reflection was gone. Daniel ran blindly until he burst through a door into what looked like a study. Books lined the walls, their spines blank. A fireplace burned though there was no wood inside. On the mantel sat a clock, old, brass, ornate. It ticked backward. He approached it slowly. When he reached to touch it, the pendulum froze. The ticking stopped, and a voice behind him said, "You shouldn't have come back." He turned. A woman stood there, pale, dressed in gray, eyes dark as midnight. "Who are you?" he asked. She tilted her head. "You don't remember? I've never been here before." Her expression softened. "You always say that." He took a step closer. "You put my name in the ledger." "Yes," she said. "It's always the same. You arrive, you see, you forget. I don't understand." She smiled sadly. "The house remembers for you." Daniel felt cold all over. "What do you mean, I forget?" She gestured toward the fire. Inside it, he saw faint images, flickering like film. Himself, standing in this same room years earlier. Then again, decades before, wearing different clothes. Then again, older, frailer. Always the same man. He stumbled backward. "That's impossible. The house keeps what it needs," the woman whispered. "And it needs you." He turned and ran. The corridors twisted around him, rearranging like a maze. He found himself back in the foyer where he had first entered. The front door stood before him. He lunged for it, and it opened easily this time. He ran out into the daylight, gasping. The mist had cleared. The air was bright and warm. He looked back, and froze. The house was gone. In its place was an empty field. Only the gate remained, creaking in the breeze. He checked his watch, only 5 minutes had passed since he arrived. Shaking, he got into his car and drove away without looking back. That night, he told himself it had been a hallucination. Maybe a dream. He poured a drink, sat by the window of his apartment, and laughed at himself. But then he noticed something. On his wrist, a faint red mark shaped like fingers. And on the table before him lay the piano sheet, the Heart Requiem. He didn't remember bringing it home. He tried to burn it in the fireplace, but it wouldn't catch flame. The paper remained untouched, cold. He shoved it into a drawer and told himself to forget. But forgetting, he would soon learn, was exactly what the house wanted. Over the next few weeks, strange things began happening. His clock started ticking backward. His reflection sometimes blinked twice when he blinked once. And every night, at exactly 3:13 a.m., he heard the faint notes of a piano. One evening, desperate for answers, Daniel drove back to the hill. This time, the house was there again, whole and waiting. He parked, climbed out, and walked slowly toward it. He didn't knock. He simply whispered, "Why me?" The door opened on its own. Inside, the woman in grey stood at the foot of the stairs. "Because you built it," she said. He stared at her, uncomprehending. "What? You built this house, Daniel Hart. You designed every wall. Every secret passage. Every door that won't stay closed. You made it to hold your grief." "My grief?" She nodded. For her. Images flashed in his mind, a woman's laughter, a ring, a car crash. A grave. He sank to his knees. "Evelyn, yes," said the woman softly. "She died. And you built this place to keep her memory alive. But you trapped yourself with her." The piano began to play again. The melody was the same, Evelyn's favorite lullaby. The woman in grey stepped closer. "You can leave," she said, "if you let go." Daniel looked at her. Let go of what? Her? The past? The pain? Or stay and become part of the walls again? He hesitated. Outside, the sunlight flickered as though the world itself were holding its breath. Then he whispered, "Goodbye." The house trembled. The floor cracked. Wind rushed through the halls, carrying with it laughter, tears, and the fading notes of the piano. The woman smiled, and vanished. Daniel stumbled out as the house collapsed behind him, sinking into the earth until only dust remained. When he turned, the hill was bare once more. He stood there for a long time, watching the sunset. For the first time in years, he felt free. Months later, when construction crews came to clear the land, they found nothing but soil and stone. No ruins, no debris. But deep underground, they uncovered a small brass clock, its hands frozen at 3:13. They gave it to Daniel. He kept it on his desk, unwound. And every now and then, just before he fell asleep, he thought he heard it ticking, backward, soft as breath. He never went back to the hill. But sometimes, when fog covered the city and the air grew still, he would look out his window and see a faint light in the distance, a single, flickering window, waiting. And deep in his chest, something whispered his name. He tried to ignore it. But the whisper always came back. It always said the same thing, "Welcome home."